Alpharetta freshmen and a few sophomores, but mostly freshmen. I'm not happy right now. Not excited about this because I've already done it once. But the freaking microphone wasn't working, so now I have to do it again. So I'm coming in a little hot, I'm coming a little upset. But I'm really, really close to liking you guys and caring about you more than just kind of like amoebas. So I'm going to do it again. But if it doesn't work this time, not happening. So go online, print this out. Top 10 topics of civil rights and civil liberties. Make sure you have this with you because we're about to go through 10 of the topics, okay? I hope you guys, hopefully you've already gotten these. So let's get started. And we're probably going to run into a bell, but I'm going to try and move through this quickly because the last one's 15 minutes, and that was way too long. But I do want to introduce you some new guest stars. They're my bobbleheads. Look at these guys. Are the freshmen going to pass this test? And a few sophomores. Are they going to do really, really well? Ooh, so they're just going to pass? But not get A's? Oh, what a pork! Pork. Not too happy that we had some guest stars today. So Pork has taken them out. They're not bobbling anymore. This is not good. This is real bad. We might have to take Pork to jail, but if we do take Pork to jail, he needs to know his civil liberties, right? And that's what this whole unit's about, that and civil rights. So let's get started because the whole thing is predicated on this thing called the incorporation doctrine. Back in the day, the Bill of Rights was established because the Anti-Federalists were scared of a strong central government, a federal government. And so the Bill of Rights actually only applied to the federal government. Barron versus Baltimore affirms this, and it says, hey, the Bill of Rights is only for the federal government. States can do whatever they want. If they want to take your rights away, then they can do that. And they did. And we didn't have anything to stop them because there was nothing in the Constitution that said they couldn't. I mean, you read the Constitution, it says Congress shall make no law. It said nothing about the states. So we have to wait until the 14th Amendment's passed. The 14th Amendment is the tool used in incorporation. The 14th Amendment says no state shall, and then it says deny privileges and immunities, and it also talks about due process and equal protection, which we'll talk about soon, right? So we have to wait until we have another court case after the 14th Amendment, and that so happens to be Gitlow versus New York. And in Gitlow versus New York, the federal Supreme Court starts this whole incorporation train that we've been learning about the last 2 weeks, and they apply this strategy, and this strategy is called, this technique, if you will, is called incorporation, selective incorporation, the incorporation doctrine, whatever. It's all the same. So here we go. It's got 4 parts, and you need to know them all. If you don't know them now, you're never going to know it. But here they are. Using the 14th Amendment to apply the Bill of Rights to the states on a case-by-case basis. Using the 14th Amendment to apply the Bill of Rights to the states on a case-by-case basis. If you don't know that by now, you're going to get attacked by this little guy. Oh, Pork gets nuts. Pork gets nuts. Sometimes he gets so mad. But that's why he's got the bell, because we know when he's getting nuts because he rings. But Pork, chill. See, he's not ringing, he's good to go. You better know the incorporation doctrine, and Pork is going to attack you. Now, case-by-case basis, that's the whole point of this. Let's look at some cases. Incorporation of the freedom of speech, Gitlow versus New York. Freedom of the press, Muir versus Minnesota. Freedom to assemble, DeJong versus Oregon. Incorporation cases for the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment, Mapp versus Ohio is the 4th. Miranda versus Arizona is self-incrimination in the 5th. Gideon versus Wainwright is your 6th, right to an attorney. We'll get back to those shortly. But now that we know what's been incorporated, we need to actually further define some of these rights. And so let's further define what your speech is, because you can't say whatever you want anytime you want to. All right? Schneck versus United States makes a very clear distinction on what is covered and what is not. One thing that is not covered is any speech that presents a clear and present danger to those around you, like saying fire in a movie theater if there's not an actual fire. We've talked about this, though. If there's a fire, please notify everyone in the theater and then move to the nearest exit in a responsible manner. Or do what I would do, which is just like crush everyone as I'm trying to sprint to safety. But anyone that said that and made me believe that there was a fire, they're going to be in trouble because they have presented a clear and present danger with their speech, and that is not protected under your First Amendment. Some other things not protected. Slander. Remember, slander is spoken. SNS. Slander is spoken. Libel is printed. But both of them are just something. Slander is something spoken with malicious intent to damage someone's character, and a lot of times you have to know that what you're saying is false. Print is the same exact thing. They're not covered under the freedom of speech or freedom of press. Let's talk about the freedom of press, because the freedom of press also has some limitations on it. You can't print anything that presents a clear and present danger to those around you or to the nation. That would be New York Times versus United States, or the Pentagon Papers case. Libel, obviously, you can't do, and you can't do obscenity. You can't print obscenity. There's a Miller test that was created for that. It's a community standards test. So obscenity is not involved in the freedom of the press. Okay. One of the other real big protections in your First Amendment, and you need to know all five, by the way: petition the government, assembly, speech, press, and religion. And we're going to talk about religion right now. Is this freedom of religion? There's two huge clauses. Huge clauses. Huge. How huge are they? They're really huge, right, guys? Oh gosh, it was a close one. They're bad, but they're down again. Establishment, free exercise. Establishment, free exercise. Those are the two clauses. The Establishment Clause, Thomas Jefferson called it something that sets up a separation of church and state. What we know it as is, I can't lead you in a prayer at school. Okay? Neither can the principal. We just cannot do it. It promotes a religion. But sometimes it's not as clear-cut as a prayer, right? So we need a test. We need to figure out if what Coach Dassinger is doing is secular or religious. And the way we do that is with the Lemon test, and that was created by Lemon versus Kurtzman, which is a court case. Now, the free exercise clause is interesting as well, because you would think that the free exercise clause means you can do whatever you want as long as you're worshiping your religion, but that's not the case, because the Supreme Court has ruled you have the free exercise of your religion unless what you're doing breaks the law, right? The snake handling things we talked about, you can't handle snakes and trust that God's not going to bite you, because if you do that and it's a venomous snake and it gets you, it's like, and then you die, that's murder from that church, because that practice of worshiping, while it may be a practice, was illegal because someone just died in your congregation. And so that place of worship will be held accountable for that death. So free exercise, you can exercise whatever you want as long as it doesn't break the law. But you have to know free exercise and establishment. I mean, it's a huge, huge concept. They love asking it on the AP exam, okay? Due process cases. So Second Amendment's dealing with the right to bear arms. Not the type of arms that Suchetes is bearing. I see you over there, Suchetes. Put them down. Those are dangerous. Those are real dangerous. But the type to bear arms as far as guns go, right? Incorporated, something versus Chicago. I don't know. It's not. I haven't seen it ever on an AP exam. It's a pretty new court case. Third Amendment's never been incorporated. 4, 5, 6 have been. Matt versus Ohio establishes the exclusionary rule. Anything that you find in an illegal search and seizure may not be used against you in a court of law. So anything that's illegally obtained without a warrant, without probable cause, without consent, cannot be used against you in a court of law. The Fifth Amendment frees you from this ability to incriminate yourself. You have the right to be free from self-incrimination. If you've ever watched 21 Jump Street, that's what the whole movie's about. They butcher the Miranda rights, and then so on and so forth. The Sixth Amendment that we need to be aware of is Gideon versus Wainwright, and that incorporates your right to an attorney. So even if you can't afford one, the state's going to provide one for you. So those are our due process cases, 4, 5, and 6. Also, Gregg versus Georgia deals with the death penalty, and you need to know what the death penalty means in America. And what it means is you're currently leaving school, and I would have left school if it wasn't for the freaking microphone. Now I have to do it again, but that's okay. Let's play it cool. I almost got over it until the bell rang, but we're good. And if I were to get so mad as to, well, never mind, let's not even use that example. That's a bad example. Death penalty, it is allowed, right? If a state wants to have it, they can have it, but they can only have it for murder one, but that's premeditated murder. This is really dark, so let's just know that the states can have it if they want to. It is not cruel and unusual punishment, but they don't have to have it. So some states do have the death penalty, some states do not. And that is the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. Let's talk about the Ninth Amendment and other things that it may or may not create. The Ninth Amendment is this thing called the Undefined Rights Amendment. And it essentially says 1 through 8, even though 1 through 8 are listing rights, those are not your only rights. There are some undefined rights out there, and one of those undefined rights would be the right to privacy. And that was established. Hey, look, we got a guest. It's Katie.
Hey.
She left her bag. I would not be here to see Katie if the freaking thing wouldn't have broke the first time. Katie, good luck in volleyball today. So Katie has left, and apparently I don't have the right to privacy, because apparently anyone can just walk in my freaking classroom whenever they want to. But that's cool, because everyone's supposed to have it. And it was created with Griswold versus Connecticut. Griswold versus Connecticut combines some amendments like 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 14, and it creates this right to privacy. Right? The 9th Amendment also is evolved a little bit of that, and it says essentially, hey, it's not listed nowhere in the Constitution, nowhere in the Bill of Rights does it say you have the right to privacy, but that's still a right. Right? So that's Griswold versus Connecticut. It establishes your right to privacy. However, what we really need to know is Roe v. Wade, and how Roe v. Wade uses your 9th Amendment and your right to privacy to legalize abortion, because there was a Texas law that said there's no such thing as abortions. Abortions are illegal. The Supreme Court ruled that that is an unconstitutional law. You cannot write that law because it inherently violates a right to privacy, but it's also a woman's undefined right to be able to figure out what she's going to do with her pregnancy, and if she wants to bring that to term or not. And so that's what the court said. There's a lot of debate about abortion. We're not going to get into it. I just got to tell you what the court said, and that's what it said in Roe v. Wade. 14th Amendment, that's huge for civil liberties and due process. So there's 2 clauses, due process and equal protection, right? Due process deals with civil liberties. We just talked about a lot of those. Equal protection clause is going to be civil rights, and we're about to talk about some civil rights movements, and every civil rights movement is predicated on this idea that no state shall deny you the equal protection of the law. In Brown versus the Board of Education, it was ruled that separate is not equal because separate schools were not equal schools. And because of that, it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. That was used in 1954, but in 2014, we had a court case called Oberfeld versus Hodges, where the Supreme Court said that a law that says marriage is between a man and a woman, and only a man and a woman married can get tax benefits, is not it is in violation of an Equal Protection Clause as well. So we've got this Equal Protection Clause that's being used in the 50s. It's being used, today even. It's all over the place. But anytime it's used, I bet there's a civil rights movement behind it, right? And so the big civil rights movement that we talked about a little bit, but remember, it's not a history class, but we talked about a lot of laws that it created, would be the African American Civil Rights Movement. And this creates some really, really big laws that are still we're still using it today, right? So Brown v. Board was in 1954, but that scope was just schools. Schools had to be integrated. But the rest of the world, in the South especially, wasn't integrated. And so how do we do that? How do we integrate private businesses? Well, we passed a law called the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and that bans discrimination in public accommodations. Bans discrimination in public accommodations. So no longer can Zaxby's say no to pork, right? Pork would probably not want to. We would probably want to go to Zaxby's because I don't think there's a lot of pork products there. We're really reaching right now. Sorry, I'm getting tired because this is nearing minute 30 of me doing this nonsense. I don't even talk this long in class, but whatever, right? So this idea that public accommodations need to be integrated, right? Well, public accommodations didn't like that, especially the Heart of Atlanta Motel. It was a motel in Atlanta, and it sued, and it said, hey, guess what? You can't use this, or you can't use the 14th Amendment for this law because we're not a state. It doesn't say the Heart of Atlanta Motel may not deny equal protection. It says no state shall. So businesses can. And that was the argument that the Heart of Atlanta Motel and other businesses put forth was, we're not the states, so we can deny equal protections if we want to. It's a private business. But what we found out was they were right. And we found another clause in the Constitution that can regulate them, and that would be the Interstate Commerce Clause. The Interstate Commerce Clause of Article 1, Section 8 says Congress can make any law regulating interstate commerce. Well, the Heart of Atlanta Motel took money from people that did not live in the state of Georgia. People like South Carolina, that were traveling to South Carolina or traveling to Alabama for whatever reason, or you go to Alabama. I've got family there. I don't even like going to see them, and I love my family. Or Alabama. I'm just kidding. If you're from Alabama, it's the greatest. Oh!
Students, sorry for this late announcement.
Late announcement.
Due to unforeseen circumstances, the Princeton Review after-school SAT prep class has been canceled.
Oh, Princeton Review SAT prep has been canceled? Kids in Alfred are going to go nuts! Pork's going crazy. Oh, how are we going to get into college? We can't review for the SAT, and we don't know Latin. And oh, God, what's happening? Relax. It's all good. You're not going to be able to, if you do get to college, you're going to get to have some college credit because you're going to crush this test, and now they're done. And so if you want to crush this test, listen to me for about 2 more minutes, and then we'll be done. The Commerce Clause, because they were engaged with interstate commerce, that means the federal government can write laws about them. And they can write laws that say, hey, you got to integrate. And good luck trying to figure out a way not to be involved in interstate commerce if you're a private business, because it's impossible. Right? That was the number one civil rights act you need to know, but another one is going to be the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That's a huge one because it gets rid of Jim Crow laws, and you better know what Jim Crow laws are. Grandfather clause, literacy test, poll tax. All of those laws tried to dissuade African Americans from voting, they wanted essentially in the South just to have white people to vote. Well, these are overturned primarily by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, gets rid of the literacy test, and the 24th Amendment. The 24th Amendment gets rid of the poll tax. So make sure you guys know that. The Civil Rights Act of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 tries to further voting rights for minorities. Then there's the Open Housing Act of 1968 that tries to redress de facto segregation. So not segregation by law or by policy, but just kind of the way it is. And again, we look at that in like housing patterns. It just happens to be a neighborhood of this ethnicity. It just happens to be a neighborhood of this national origin. There's not any law that says you have to live here if you're this national origin. It just happens that way. So the Open Housing Act of 1968 tries to get rid of that. But de jure segregation by law was eliminated with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So de jure is no longer a thing. De facto is still kind of a thing. Okay. Last but not least, other civil rights movements and cases. Honestly, let's look at the women's rights movement. You need to know about the women's rights movement. You need to know 19th Amendment, Title IX. 19th Amendment gives women the right to vote. Title IX is preventing gender discrimination in federally subsidized programs, essentially schools and school sports. So everyone that's an athlete at Alpharetta needs to have the same amount of money tied to their name from the state or the federal government, right? Booster clubs, it's a little different, but we've got to follow Title IX with state and federal monies. Lau versus Nichols creates ESOL classes. DOMA, Defensive Marriage Act, is unconstitutional because it violates the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, due Equal Protection Clause. And last but not least is UC Regents versus Bake. Everyone, when we ask about affirmative action, everyone says it's quota systems, and we reserve quotas for specific races. That's wrong. UC Regents versus Bake eliminated that in 1978. It says quotas are unconstitutional, so you can't use them. That is it. That was a really long time, but we had a lot of distractions, and sorry about that. But sometimes this guy gets crazy and he starts, oh no, body slam, what's going on? Oh gosh, you can't even see it. All right. Hey, good luck to you guys, and yeah, crush it.